in Des Moines concluded the weekend on Sunday morning. Here's entrepreneur Andrew Yang.
The only counter-argument to having 16-year-olds vote is that you somehow don't know that much about politics. To which I'd suggest there are a lot of Americans who don't know that much about politics.
Looking ahead, Hawaii Representative Tulsi Gabbard is just one poll away from qualifying for the 4th Democratic debate. From Pacifica Network and Public News Service, I'm Lily Bolke. Thanks for listening at pacificanetwork.org and publicnewsservice.org.
WBAI New York 99.5 FM and WBAI.org on the web. Coming up next, we'll be Waking Up with Juliana Forlano and King Downing.
Welcome to Waking Up, everybody. I'm Juliana Forlano. Happy Monday. It's WBAI 99.5 FM on your dial or your Alexa program. I'm in the studio.
King Downing. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, King. Welcome. Nice to see you again. I missed you over the weekend.
Yeah, I missed you too.
I know, it's hard. This is addictive. And I've missed you.
Crack-a-lack.
Radio people. Hey, today on the show, Jamie Bauer is coming in to talk to us about the New York City-based direct action group Rise and Resist and the United in Outrage March that is happening, I believe, today. And in the second half of the program, William Rivers Pitt is coming in to discuss Trump's corrupt ties to the Saudi government. Stay tuned. It'll be a great show. Welcome to the program, everybody. It is 71 degrees. It's going up to now 91 degrees. The more I check in with the weather to give you the latest, the higher that mercury is rising. Sunshine and clouds are mixed today. 91 degrees. Then tonight, thunderstorms early, scattered during the evening, with mainly clear skies after midnight, low of 68 degrees. Tomorrow's only going up to 78 with mostly sunny. But the deal is it does not feel much like fall, because it is so incredibly humid. Now, on the weatherchannel.com, where I go to get my weather updates, there's a video that says, it says, why does autumn not feel like fall? And then I played the video because I wanted to bring that science and technology and sort of climate change related news to my listeners here, and it didn't tell you. It just basically said it's going to be hot. But it didn't say why. But the video was named why, which is the question on everyone's mind. I want to know the mechanism for why it is so humid and why it doesn't feel like fall. Do we have any climate scientists out there listening? Because if we do, please call us. We'll try to find one to answer that question. But if you happen to be listening and already know, 212-209-2877.
Does that channel acknowledge climate change, the disaster? Do they say anything about it, or are they
I don't
just
know.
Yeah.
It's not really.
Okay.
Sometimes. I feel like they do, but not in a way that it's in a way that's insidiously poor, because they acknowledge it, but then they don't talk about it as the emergency that we are seeing. Meanwhile, they cover, they do a lot of fear mongering, breaking news after breaking news. And there's a lot right now. The floods, the storm that's going toward, there's another tropical storm warning for Puerto Rico this morning. And, there's always something. Meanwhile, on the right, the far right, the climate strike that happened this weekend. By the way, who went? I went in the beginning, and let's just say it was crowded. There was a lot of people. Huge showing. I understand it was a huge showing all over the world, but here in New York, we had a really big showing. If you went, I'd like to hear your experience. 212-209-2877. You can call in throughout the course of the show and just tell us how it was for you. 212-209-2877. But let me tell you, for Fox News, they were absolutely furious, and a lot of right-wing media. I mean, how do you spin this, Fox News did this. They attacked the children for following along with others, saying, oh, you're just following each other, even though the idea for the climate strike was that of a 16-year-old girl, a child herself. One of the Fox hosts dismissed the protest for being pre-planned, as if the only kind of protest... You're laughing. Oh, they planned it. As if the right wing hasn't had this giant plan this overarching plan they've been carrying out for 30 years.
Or the fossil fuel companies.
Yeah, they don't have any plans at all. Yeah. Hannity's show, of course, linked concerns about climate change to witchcraft, Area 51 conspiracies, and the Salem witch trials. And another one of those Fox News hosts called it a fake protest. And Janine Pirro, she wanted to know when the children will protest for Republican priorities.
Like privatizing schools and cutting the budgets for education, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Want to learn anything or have a job. Cut. The lowest point, by the way, was not even that. It was when Fox and Friends attacked students for participating in the strike immediately before reporting about record rain and flooding in Texas from Tropical Storm Imelda. So there's a slight disconnect there. Got that going on. I mean, I'm just bringing you that news because I'm just assuming you're not watching. And now, I like to start off our Monday morning with...
A message from the King, a message from the King, a message from the King.
Please sit down in your boats that are being flooded.
Yeah.
So we got some great news on the independence front, and that is that the Puerto Rican march that was held on Saturday was a big success, and hundreds of people turned out. And Boricua Independentista Front, El Frente, sponsored this march, and it was a call for the end of colonialism they invoked UN Resolution 1514, which calls for the decolonization of Puerto Rico, which is, I didn't know until this, is the oldest colony in the world right now. The U.S. is holding the oldest colony in the world. They also wanted the abolition of the Fiscal Control Board, which is the junta, they call it down there, which has been making all of the tough financial decisions that are cutting back on almost everything that the island has. And they called for fair compensation after 121 years of colonization, and also environmental justice and the cancellation of the debt. But the high point was the keynote speech by Oscar Lopez Rivera, one of the political prisoners and a professor now, but he was joined by others whose names have not been mentioned as political prisoners in the struggle for Puerto Rican independence. Alicia and Lucy Rodriguez, Luis Rosa, Adolfo Matos, Edwin Cortez, Ricardo Jimenez, and Norberto Gonzalez Claudio, all who are heroes to Puerto Ricans and people who favor independence everywhere. So that push continues.
Excellent. And they got it in just before another tropical storm hits Puerto Rico.
Right.
It's nice that they had nice weather for that.
Yeah.
I noticed the bad weather tends to dampen the... can't get out. What can I tell you? Yeah, well, we would be remiss if we didn't mention how Trump has admitted that he spoke to Ukraine about Biden. Reactions to this news, I'm sure you've been following over the weekend. Reactions to President Trump calling on the Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden suggest that some Democrats might actually change their calculations on impeachment. Nancy Pelosi leveled a warning of her own finally. Turn over the secret whistleblower complaint or face a serious escalation from Congress. What do you make of this story, King? Your thoughts about this?
It's
Are we getting any closer?
More of the same. The emollients clause, which has to do with officials not accepting gifts, and him getting favors for a political campaign is a form of a gift. And
exactly.
So,
well, we're going to talk to William Rivers Pitt from Truthout today, just about how the Saudis own an entire multi-million dollar floor of the Trump Tower. And one of them bought his boat when he couldn't, I guess, he had to, it got taken over. It got taken by the creditors. Also in other news related to our area, New Jersey looks like they're going to be getting their senator back in full, because unless Cory Booker can raise almost $2 million in the next few days, he's going to have to drop out of the race, it seems. So he has not dropped out yet. He went to Iowa and served veggie burgers at the... that's not going to go over well, but whatever. He's a vegan. He served veggie burgers over at the Iowa steak fry. It's called a steak fry, by the way, not a vegan fry. Just saying, they should have a vegan fry. But most of America has not come around to that way of thinking quite yet. Anyway, he's saying that everything's going great. But, $1.7 million in 10 days they need, according to his campaign manager, or else he's going to have to drop out. So if you really love Cory Booker, now's the time to give But I don't think he was going to go anywhere, because he got in on, let's say, questionable ways, right? And then he tried to clean it up, saying he was going to go, small donations, that kind of thing. But I don't see how he would get that. You need to be kind of semi-pure as a politician in order for people to want to actually trust you and take money out of their pockets and give it to you.
Yeah, and the local folks, all the activist local folks aren't happy with him.
No. Although so many of us are unhappy with any number of politicians. It's like, being happy is not necessarily what you got to vote on. You got to vote on how to push toward the priority that you need. And I'm sure he probably was better than whoever was on the right. Don't know. You can call me if you live in New Jersey. You're listening to Waking Up. I'm Juliana Forlano in the studio with King Downing. It is the 23rd of September, and it's going to be 91 degrees outside. Can you believe that? We're going to take a musical break, and when we come back, we are going to have Jamie Bauer is joining us on the program today. She is they are an activist with the New York City-based direct action group Rise and Resist, who have been doing things all over the city. And there's a United in Outrage March happening today. So let's talk about that when we return. Stay tuned.
Thanks for taking my call, and thanks for C-SPAN. I really appreciate it. Our president and our beautiful first lady, they went down to El Paso, Texas, and they posed with a baby that the president's rhetoric, Fox News rhetoric, your rhetoric, had helped to orphan. And I think this thing about Trump is making America great again. Trump has made America hate again. And it's this hatred of races. I hear it all the time when I talk to Republicans, and they say, I went down to Texas, and there are all these Mexicans down there, and they're all speaking Spanish. Well, I got news for you. Those weren't Mexicans. Those were the Americans. That guy that went down to El Paso to shoot a bunch of Mexicans, he shot a bunch of Americans. And I'm really tired of this anti-immigrant, anti-people with brown skin rhetoric that's coming out of Fox News, coming out of people like you, and coming out of our president. It's demeaning. It's beneath the office. It's beneath you. You used to be a judge. You know better. It's time that stopped.
Former ESPN anchor Jamel Hill created kind of stir with a piece in The Atlantic where she argued that black athletes should stop attending white majority colleges. What's your reaction to this?
Well, I read the article, and when I saw the uproar over it, I read the article, and I agree with her. She had some great points in that article. When you look at the history of HBCUs and you look at the hundreds of thousands of black professionals that have come from these schools over the course of the last several years since they've been created, and you look at what's been lost since integration has happened, what she was saying was simply that athletics is a multi-billion-dollar business. I went to two historically white universities, Duke University and University of Georgia, that have a lot of money based on athletics. What she was saying that, look, we're living in a time where there's a big racial wealth gap. The average white family has a net income, a net worth that's 10 times that of a black family. And so if we're able to have some of these athletes that create so much income go to some of these schools, not that white students don't go and students of other ethnicities don't go. We live in a time where everybody can go wherever they want to. But what she was saying simply, if we're trying to pump money and revenue into some of these communities, that there's still this big disparity, this may be a way to do it. Obviously, that's in a vacuum. Yeah. There are other factors to figure into that. But when you read her argument, look, she lays it out very, very cleanly, and it's actually something that I agree with.
All right, Benjamin. Well, I think that Duke would have not been thrilled about your not being there, but we'll leave it at that. I mean, the college sports would certainly be a lot different today if we went down a color-coded way of figuring out college.
Juliana Forlano in the studio with King Downing. This is WBAI 99.5 FM, or you're watching it streaming on Twitch or on YouTube. On YouTube, it's on my channel. On Twitch, it's on act.tv. Thanks to them for doing that service. Hello, viewers. Hello, listeners. It is a beautiful day. Thank you, U2. I was reminded on my trip upstate that U2 has this great song, so I brought it for you all for this morning.
Thank you.
Oh, it was great. Yeah. Okay, so Donald Trump's going to be in New York City, by the way, to address the United Nations General Assembly tomorrow, September 24th. That means not only gridlock alert in the city, so don't drive anywhere. If you can avoid it, take the train. But it means that tonight, on the eve, activists are planning on coming together to send the message that in all he stands for is, pretty much everything that New Yorkers stand against. There's going to be marches, peaceful march called United in Outrage to protest the many injustices of the administration. Its accomplices, by the way, its supporters, and the harm done in its name. Today we have one of the organizers of the march with us to talk about how you can get involved and the power of nonviolent direct action. Jamie Bauer is an activist with the New York City-based direct action group Rise and Resist. This year, Jamie has organized and attended demonstrations about impeachment, abuse of power, immigration, and climate emergency. Jamie, along with several other ACT UP alumni, conducts martial trainings and civil disobedience trainings and helps organize Rise and Resist vigils, pickets, and marches. Prior to Rise and Resist, Jamie was an activist with feminist anti-militarist groups ACT UP New York and the War Resisters League. Jamie, thanks for joining us on the program today.
Thanks, Alana, for having me on.
Oh, I'm Juliana, but Alana is right.
Juliana, I'm sorry.
No problem. Juliana, or it's fine. I screwed up your name earlier, so now we're even.
That's all right, and it's really early in the morning for me, but I am really happy to be on.
Well, I'm super glad that you could come, because hopefully some of our listeners will be, just telling our listeners what's going on, and then hopefully they'll want to participate as well. Can you tell us about the United in Outrage March and how it came to be?
Sure. One of the things that Rise and Resist does is that every time President Trump comes to town, which is only really 2 or 3 times a year, we throw a protest. And we have gone to fundraisers that he's had in New York City. But every Tuesday that the on the opening of the UN General Assembly, he speaks. And we feel it's very important for the world to understand that New Yorkers object to Trump and that he does not speak for us. So this is the 3rd year he's spoken at the UN, and this year we will be demonstrating on the eve of his speech. And he's actually in New York right now. He's going to
I thought I smelled sulfur.
Yeah, he's going to a global freedom of religion. I'm making hand quotes with my fingers for that freedom of religion conference today. But tomorrow he is addressing the UN General Assembly. And we will be having our own People's Assembly. We will be assembling in Bryant Park tonight at 5:30 p.m. and then marching from Bryant Park at 6 o'clock down to Washington Square Park. And this is an opportunity for everybody who's been involved in the resistance to get together and to intersectionally raise the issues that we've been raising over the past couple of years.
What are are there demands for the march, and is this specifically targeted at the Trump administration?
So it's specifically targeted both at the Trump administration, but I would also say to the Republicans that are complicit and supporting it. And even though they're not really part of the Trump administration, people like Mitch McConnell.
Might as well be.
Exactly.
Right.
And, what we're going to be doing is letting every group bring the message that they've been fighting for over the past year to the demonstration with us. And we'll be working, we have about 80 sponsors, and a lot of the groups that we've been working with over the last couple of years will be joining us and bringing their banners and their signs so that it can really reflect what's going on in New York.
I am a correspondent for act.tv as well as this job, and so I often am covering different protests and marches in the city here in New York City. That's my other gig. And I see Rise and Resist everywhere. You guys are doing such an amazing job just being sort of part of all these different groups. Can you talk about the importance of, you mentioned intersectionality, talk about the importance of groups supporting each other in their fights, even if they're not directly related?
Sure. For example, we've brought contingents to many demonstrations, but we do a lot of demonstrations and we do some demonstrations with other groups. So we're not really a coalition group. Rise and Resist has about 100 active members. We meet every week and we usually get 30, 40 people at each of our weekly meetings. And we feel that it is really important to show up and to be out on the street. And we like to be out on the street for a number of reasons, one of which is so that ordinary people in their regular day are confronted with and see people objecting and get the idea that they don't have to wait until Election Day to take a stand and to do something.
That's always one of my favorite things to cover when, just the side gawkers. I mean, we have so many tourists that it's a wonderful place to have a demonstration and actually show that there's, show people from, say, Iowa or wherever they're coming from to go to our tourist destinations, that this is a politically active city.
Right. And to that, it's important for us to set a record of people objecting to what this administration is doing so that when history books are written, there is a clear on the street, visible presence that can be spoken about.
Well, hopefully some decent person will write the history books, because oftentimes the history books get just wiped of, the resistance. But anyway.
Right. And third, we believe that you can't always see instantaneous change from activism, which is that we can't gauge how effective we're being, and we don't know what we have stopped from happening that might have be happening or could have happened if we weren't out on the street a lot.
I agree with you 100%. We get a lot of calls in here who are like, I marched in the Women's March, and now we have Kavanaugh. No, you don't know what you stopped. You don't know what.
Right.
And would you have felt that you were in your own personal integrity had you not marched? You got to follow your own integrity.
Exactly. And, I think the other thing is that no matter when people became politically active, I've been active since my late teens, but other people just got into the movement. We also understand that the day Trump is thrown out into office, it's not going to revert to some ideal situation that we all want to live in. We recognize that American history repeats itself, and that what is going on now, although it's probably worse than it's been at any time in recent past, the immigration stuff was going on during the Obama administration. It's going to continue to go on when we get a new administration, and that we're going to have to keep fighting.
Jamie, I appreciate your attitude. It's a really great attitude in terms of this is a movement that will continue on. We are going to continue to press for justice, because there's always some injustice happening somewhere, and not that we're just going to, march, win this one, and then go back to thinking everything is fine, and that. Yeah, that's a very great attitude. And
Absolutely
it helps people not get burned out when you just say, oh, no, I resist injustice on all fronts, regardless of who's in office. And that's what I do. It's part of my way of being. And then you don't get burned out.
Right. But you also have to say, yes, there is a difference between Trump and Obama.
Thank you. Hold on. You're getting the clapping crowd. Yes, I agree completely. Yes. And there would have been a difference between Trump and Hillary. Sorry
Absolutely.
to say that.
Yes.
Doesn't mean there wouldn't be things to protest.
Hillary was a terrible hawk, and so if she were president, we would be out raising issues about Iraq and Afghanistan and, the never-ending wars.
Let's talk about the tactics used for the march that are specifically nonviolent. Can you talk about the importance of nonviolent direct action today?
Sure. One of the things that Rise and Resist does is to go out into the street and to push, or the sidewalk really, and push the limits of our First Amendment rights of free speech and freedom of assembly, and we know our rights.
So you don't get a permit from the city. You just do it.
Exactly.
Good.
So we don't ask for permits. We don't pay for. Once in a while, when we feel that is absolutely essential to an issue to have a speaker, we will get a sound permit. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, we don't. Most of the time, we prefer to make our message with our signs, with our leaflets, with our chants, and to let the people really participate in the action. We find most rallies to be very passive, mm-hmm. and we prefer each person to be able to state their message clearly rather than just be a prop for someone else's message.
For the march, I have.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't.
Go ahead. No.
For the march, I have a quote from from you all, the organizing body. Together, we are standing up to the racist attacks, police and state-sanctioned brutality, white supremacy, homophobic violence, and boundless misogyny. The demonization and detention of immigrants and inhumane policies that separate families. The funneling of money to the wealthy. The promotion of climate science ignorance. The refusal to act on common sense gun safety laws and policies that discriminate against people with disabilities. And some of the groups that you mentioned, ACT UP, Code Pink, Council on American Islamic Relations, Defend Democracy in Brazil, WBAI, that's us, we are part of this thing, Empire State Indivisible, Greenpeace New York City, Jackson Heights Immigrant Solidarity Network, Move On, New Sanctuary Coalition, People's Climate Movement, Truthout, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, yeah? Okay. Mm-hmm. Working Families Party, the Yemeni American Merchants Association, and the list goes on. This is a big thing, and I'm really grateful to be able to support you by announcing it. So it's happening today at 5:30 p.m., gathering in Bryant Park. Stepping off at 6 o'clock and marching to Washington Square Park. So bring your signs, your banners, proclaiming your fight, your issue, what you care about, the change you're working toward. And, the organizers are also making an effort to make the march accessible for everyone. I think it's really important because, all eyes are on New York. All eyes are on what's happening in the UN. And we just stepped off the climate march, or excuse me, not the climate march, but the climate strike, different but similar, this weekend, and people are really engaged right now. So I think it's wonderful. It's called the United in Outrage March. Any final thoughts and words you'd like our audience to know about this particular march?
I would say just come, join us. Don't be afraid. Don't be complicit, and get active.
And I would suggest, even if you go as a solo person, just introduce yourself to some people, because I have found that it's a wonderful place to just be in solidarity with folks. Any kind of
Absolutely.
March, it just breaks that isolation that one feels after watching regular newscasts, I think. Jamie Bauer, thank you so much, and I look forward to meeting you in the streets.
Great. Thank you so much for having me on.
You are welcome. Again, it is tonight is the action at 5:30 p.m. is the gathering. 6 o'clock is when the march starts from Bryant Park to Washington Square Park. You're listening to WBAI 99.5 FM, 71 degrees right now, going up to 91 degrees today in this apocalyptic weather that we are all living through. We'll take our musical break, and we'll be right back with William Rivers Pitt from Truthout.
That wasn't the question.
I am answering your question.
Which period was America great that we're trying to replicate? Which era was it? Tell me.
I think I'll answer your question.
Tell me.
I'm ready to answer your question.
Which era was it?
What?
Which era was so great?
Here's the thing that you guys are forgetting. America was actually one of the slavery was all over the world. All over the world. America was. No, I'm not saying it's okay. So why are you saying oh?
Amen.
America was one of the first countries.
I want to like you so bad.
I'm trying to answer your question.
Smart. I want to like you so much.
I can't answer the question.
I want to hear you. I want to be able to hear them. I want to be able to hear them.
If I can't answer the question and you're just going to boo when I say slavery was all over the world, which is a fact, why are you booing a fact?
Because you're making light of.
No, I'm not.
You're making light
I
of
haven't
the
gotten into my points. I'm not
of
making
people that look like us. You can't make light of that. That ain't nothing you
I haven't
breeze
even
over.
finished the sentence. How am I making light of
You
anything?
started with is some bullshit.
Okay.
Former ESPN anchor Jamel Hill created kind of stir with a piece in The Atlantic where she argued that black athletes should stop attending white majority colleges. What's your reaction to this?
Well, I read the article, and when I saw the uproar over it, I read the article, and I agree with her. She had some great points in that article. When you look at the history of HBCUs and you look at the hundreds of thousands of black professionals that have come from these schools over the course of the last several years since they've been created, and you look at what's been lost since integration has happened, what she was saying was simply that athletics is a multi-billion-dollar business. I went to two historically white universities, Duke University and University of Georgia, that have a lot of money based on athletics. What she was saying was that, look, we're living in a time where there's a big racial wealth gap. The average white family has a net income, a net worth that's 10 times that of a black family. And so if we're able to have some of these athletes that create so much income go to some of these schools, not that white students don't go and students of other ethnicities don't go. We live in a time where everybody can go wherever they want to. But what she was saying simply, if we're trying to pump money and revenue into some of these communities, that there's still this big disparity, this may be a way to do it. Obviously, that's in a vacuum. Yeah. There are other factors to figure into that. But when you read her argument, look, she lays it out very, very cleanly, and it's actually something that I agree with.
All right, Benjamin. Well, I think that Duke would have not been thrilled about your not being there, but we'll leave it at that. I mean, the college sports would certainly be a lot different today if we went down a color-coded way of figuring out college admissions. I mean, that's resegregating the country. Why do we want that?
Well, no, because segregation, as you know, is government mandated.
Yeah, I get it.
This is not segregation. Yeah. This is if you read the article.
I don't feel all that fine. Even if it is the end of the world. This is WBAI 99.5 FM. You're listening to Waking Up with Juliana and King. It is Monday, September 23rd at 7:30 in the morning. It's 71 degrees outside, going up to 91 ridiculous climate change degrees. Hey, Trump and the Saudi royal leaders have been friends for a long time, namely through the big purchases that the Saudis have made to Trump's businesses. But now that Trump is president, it appears the Saudis are the ones cashing in after the recent attack against a significant portion of Saudi Arabia's petroleum infrastructure. The commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces appeared to have verbally ceded decision-making power over to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Today on the show, William Rivers Pitt joins us to talk about the likelihood of the U.S. going to war and how much of that decision will be made with Trump's business ties with Saudi Arabia in mind. William, thanks for joining us on the program.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I have missed you. I have always enjoyed
I have missed you as well. How was your weekend? It was wonderful.
It was lovely. I took a dip in a lake upstate, and I saw some changing trees, so nature is still happening somewhere.
Well, here in New Hampshire, it's happening fast.
Yeah. Well, in case you've just crawled out from under a rock, William Rivers Pitt is the senior editor and lead columnist at Truthout, New York Times, and internationally best-selling author of 4 books, and is up in the beauties of New Hampshire. William, your recent piece is called "Saudi Arabia Owns the 45th Floor of Trump Tower," and it shows. How does it show?
Well, the article got into the fact that as this situation between Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the Houthis in Yemen started to gin itself up, Trump he's quite good in the last few days at absolutely saying, what happens to be the truth. Yes, I talked to Ukraine about Biden. Yes, I will be ceding basically decision-making power over going to war against Iran to Saudi Arabia, depending on what they have to say and whether or not they told us that Iran did it. He was quite forthright about it in a tweet.
Did I miss something, or was it was not the U.S. that was attacked by Iran? Did I?
No, the U.S. had very, very little to do with it. Now that the United States is the Saudi Arabia of fracking, we actually don't really need Saudi oil all that much. But we're all about our allies, because so much for that America First thing.
We're all about our allies, but not Europe.
but not, yes, and certainly not South and Central America.
So in 2000, from your article, you say that Trump's financial dealings with Saudi Arabia have been huge. You know, in 2001, he sold the entire 45th floor of Trump Tower to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for $4.5 million.
Yep. In 2008, that floor became their mission to the United Nations. He lost his boat to the Saudis when he went broke for the second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth time.
It's hard to keep track.
Yeah, he was bragging as late as 2016 about how the Saudis give him $40-50 million in rent.
And now he's out there basically saying things like
they friends. I mean,
they're tight. You buy they. Okay, so what is Trump subject to legal penalties for his business ties to the Saudis?
The emoluments clause is pretty straightforward about this. The question is who's going to enforce it.
Yes, who is going to enforce it?
It's Andrew Jackson in the Supreme Court again. They made their ruling. Now let's see them enforce it. I mean, as with so many other things that are taking place right here, when you have firewalls like the Attorney General, the majority, the Senate Majority Leader, and the majority on the Supreme Court, you can't act with as much hubris and mayhem as this person does without really feeling, the cold touch of fate upon yourself. I don't think there are any sleepless nights in the White House, or at least not for this reason.
So were you implying in your article that there's because we are the United States or we're the Saudi Arabia of fracking, and we don't really need for our energy purposes Saudi Arabia as much as we once did, are you implying that the only reason that we need to be friends with Saudi Arabia is so that Trump can continue to make money in his business dealings?
Well, on a normal, back when in the first Gulf War, when it could be argued that the Saudi oil fields were actually under threat, the United States still wasn't getting a majority of its petroleum from Saudi Arabia. We've got Venezuela right down the block, which provides a rather significant portion, plus our own supplies, as clean and yummy as those may be. But this argument was put forward during the run up to that war, and the Europe, our allies, depend on quite a significant portion of their oil supplies come from Saudi Arabia. So if this guy wasn't so full of poop, you could smell him around the corner. You could say, well, we do have to act in behest of the economic, protection of our allies and blah blah blah. And also, and I'm putting on my awful hat on here, saying we're teetering on the edge of a recession. Probably the last thing the global economy needs is an oil shock.
Well, I have said many times on this show and others that if we had a clean, green energy economy, many of these problems...
None of this would be happening.
Exactly.
No one's ever heard of the wind spill, a sun spill. That's called Sunday. It was beautiful.
Exactly. And we have enough heat now if we could just trap that somehow and have that run our cars and aeroplanes.
Well,
that would be useful.
It has long been my contention, and I think the science backs me up on this. I'm not saying anything new or inventive, that the trick isn't, the solar panels or the wind panels. Germany did a wonderful job of running solar panels down the sides of their highways. I mean, there's all of that unused real estate. The trick is coming up with a battery that can hold the juice. Well,
we'll work on it. That's excellent.
I'm just saying.
No, I hear you. Yeah. Well, maybe it'd be great if we were all running our homes off the grid.
That would be helpful, too.
At this point, what would you say the likelihood is of the United States going to war with Iran? Like, how much of an influence does Saudi Arabia have on the next moves?
Yeah, I think that the swelling has gone down. The problem is, first of all, the Donald Trump, the one thing I give him credit for is that he does not want to go to war anywhere. I don't know what his motivations are, and frankly, I don't care. But excising
because he has hotels everywhere.
Because he has business interests, and because he's, and I don't want to sound all mad about this, but he's one of the biggest braggart cowards I've ever met, and it's probably the only reason we're all still alive. He loves to talk tough, But at the end of the day, he won't even fire Omarosa face to face. So as Drew McGarry, a great writer, opined a year or so ago. So the problem that Saudi Arabia has is if war is undertaken. I mean, Saudi Arabia is really good at beating up Yemen. Yemen's one of the poorest countries in the world. But if they go and actually try to punch Iran in the nose, Iran will pave them and then, set up shoe stores and, just basically turn Saudi Arabia into its own little parking lot. Iran is not to be trifled with militarily, particularly in its own backyard. And Saudi Arabia, despite all the pretty expensive weapons that they've gotten from the United States, wouldn't stand a chance unless the United States came in with a Gulf War / 2003 invasion size commitment. And clearly, thankfully, I give credit where credit is due. It does not seem, for all of the talk, that the Trump administration is willing to do that. And if Saudi Arabia doesn't have that kind of big guy to stand behind and go, if they don't have that, then I don't see them starting a conflict. I could see Iran feeling emboldened by this and poking the bear a few more times. But Iran doesn't want a war either. Iran wants the sanctions lifted so they can get back to work.
Right.
Thanks for bringing up the arms sales. That's the question I'd like to ask you. Is it possible that, given that I think in the past Saudi Arabia had pledged to buy, $400 billion worth of arms? The number may not be right, but could all this saber rattling just be another chance for Trump to sell more arms and more weapons to the Saudis and then boost the military-industrial complex?
Well, I think if it's not the direct reason for it, it's certainly an ancillary benefit. Someone sitting in an office somewhere went, hey, and said exactly what you're saying. We can probably sell them more bullets because of this.
We're speaking.
So if it was out of the gate, the reason for, I don't think anybody expected Iran to flip missiles into Saudi's oil infrastructure. That was straight out of nowhere. But if you listen to the foreign policy wonks, they'll tell you that after Trump failed to pull the trigger when they shot down the drone, which again, credit where credit is due, Iran felt like they could flex their muscles a little bit more, and the idea that this attack is completely out of nowhere in the context of the awful war that's going on in Yemen. This is in the article you brought up at the beginning. I described it in its own way as Saudi Arabia's September 11th, but without the massive awful body count. But on September 11th, we got hit in the money. This attack hit Saudi Arabia in the oil. It was an economic attack as much as it was a terrorist attack and all the rest. And speaking of that, however you want to describe it, it hit them right where they hurt the most. It hit them in the money.
We're speaking with William Rivers Pitt, senior editor and lead columnist at Truthout. William, can we pivot a bit to see your thoughts about what's happening with this Trump basically saying, I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever, basically pointing the finger for something that he himself has done. I'm talking about his asking the Ukraine to come out and spill the beans about their dealing with Joe Biden's son.
Well, the one part that he left out, because first of all, he thinks he's untouchable, and he's got good reason to think so. He said, I talked to him about Biden. We really do all this corruption. We wanted to make sure that there's no corruption in Ukraine. And he basically admitted doing it. But the one part he left out was, and I told them that if they didn't investigate him, I'll withhold that military aid. $250 million. That the quid pro quo there is the pivot point, is the fulcrum of there being an actual impeachable crime. Simply calling the Ukrainian president and complaining about a political rival, it's gross, but it's not an abuse of power.
Right.
He did not admit to the key element of the affair, which, if the transcript proves it, if we ever get our hands on it, or if the whistleblower report proves it, if we ever get our hands on it, that's where the rubber meets the road.
But isn't he doing the same thing that Joe Biden was accused of doing? Was threatening to have the Ukraine prosecutor fired for investigating the company that Hunter Biden was on the board of and getting compensation from? I mean, isn't he doing the exact same thing that everyone's claiming that Biden was doing?
Projection.
Well, that's his favorite thing to do is projection. You know, you're the puppet. You're the puppet.
No, he's the puppet.
He's. It comes back to the question of accountability. And for my money, everyone is sitting here going, "Where are the Democrats? Why aren't the Democrats doing anything?" And I'm right there with the chorus of that. I don't know what is going on in Nancy Pelosi's head. I truly don't. But it is, you know, if you don't stop it, we're going to get even angrier. And we're going to point two fingers instead of one.
Yeah, really. This is ridiculous.
We cannot allow our frustration on that score to overwhelm the fact that what we should be looking at is these Republicans who have the power to do something about this, simply quitting, as 45 Republican members of the House have done, and more to follow, because I don't want to be in the minority. Being in the minority is no fun. Go back to bed. The onus has to be on the Mitch McConnell and the Republican majority in the Senate, who are the people who can make a difference in this fight. If that firewall comes down, then Trump has got a great deal of trouble on his plate. And until it does, he literally can't shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it.
Exactly what he said was going to happen. Do you see any? And as we come to the end of our segment here, do you see any sort of chinks in the armor that Republicans are actually starting to say, wait a minute, this isn't good, and
none in public besides all the crowd of Republicans jumping out the window in the House. You don't see a lot of senators retiring, because you don't retire when you're in the majority. I don't care if Godzilla's in the White House; it doesn't happen. If someone somehow somewhere, none of this is going to be immediate. They're going to sue these documents from being released. He's like, yeah, maybe I'll release the transcript. No, you won't. You never will.
He's being sued on every front and lawsuits on every front. How does he even have time to do anything presidential? Probably it's good that he doesn't have time to do his own agenda. That's good. Slow him down a little bit. I don't like his agenda.
His agenda is to watch Fox News and hate tweet about it. Anybody who watches as much television as he does, you can't really say that his schedule is being disrupted.
Tell me. Yep, you said it. You said it. William Rivers Pitt, senior editor and lead columnist at Truthout. Thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. Have a great week.
Yeah, you have a great week too, and we look forward to having you on in 2 weeks. You're listening to Waking Up. I'm Juliana Forlano. I am in the studio with King Downing. Alana Levinson is here with us also. And guess who else is behind the board? Michael G. Haskins is here with us. Michael's show is on today at 11 a.m. Is that right? Did I get the time right? I did.
You did.
Living for the City. What's coming up on the show today?
Well, around 11:30, I'm going to be speaking with the New York Times best-selling author Greg Palast.
We love
Best
Greg
Democracy
Palast.
Money Can Buy. I've been trying to get him for a while, but now the time has aligned up rightly because he's in California, so you can't ask him to come.
That's why we can't have him on the morning show.
At 7 o'clock in the morning. No. But now the time has lined up. So we're going to be talking about the election in Georgia last year, the election just a few weeks ago in North Carolina, and of course 2020.
Yeah, I'm scared about that.
Yes, because it's not just the Russians solely. We have a lot to answer for ourselves in this country about what we did collectively. So I'm going to have that on, and of course the Sankofa Moments in Time. That's going to be a part of it. I have a very special presentation by a piece by Sterling A. Brown called "He Was a Man." It's an audio presentation of Sterling's work by Jason Alexander and Jason Lucas, rather, excuse me.
I was going to say, you mean the guy from Seinfeld?
No, Jason Lucas.
George?
And I'm looking forward to presenting that. So all of that on Living for the City.
That's going to be at 11 o'clock today on WBAI. And again, if you can't follow our show regularly at the regular scheduled time. You can go to WBAI.org and watch our show there in the archives. You can listen to Michael's show in the archives. Also at 5 o'clock, we have Advocating for Justice with Arthur Schwartz, who we're going to get on the line right now and find out what he's going to be talking about. This is Waking Up. I'm Juliana Forlano. It is Monday, September the 23rd. There's a lot going on. It is 71 degrees, going up to 91 degrees outside today in the New York City area. Tonight they're expecting thunderstorms, but not until after the evening commute. So hopefully we'll all get home without a big problem there. Arthur, what is happening on Advocating for Justice today? Good morning.
Today we're actually going to be talking to people who want to advocate for justice in the court system.
Ooh.
As this year, we had the big race in Queens for DA. Well, next year, Cyrus Vance, who is the DA in Manhattan, and who has never been someone who the defense bar has particularly loved, the progressive defense bar, and who has made a number of controversial decisions in recent years about who he is or isn't going to prosecute, and who also probably has, I believe he has put more people in jail than all the other DAs in the city combined. He has 3 opponents, and 2 of them are going to be on Advocating for Justice today. One is Alvin Bragg, who's a former deputy attorney general who calls himself a people's lawyer from Harlem, and the other is Janos Marone, who is he calls himself he's a civil rights lawyer who was very active in the movement to close Rikers Island. So those 2 guys are going to be on.
Can you be sure to ask them about Cy Vance's record and his office, how they sought to reduce the sex offender status for Epstein? This is a disgusting thing that he did, and I think it's important that we discuss it.
Okay, I'm good. But I'm just telling you, both of these guys, the main focus of what they're going to talk about is how they want to reduce the number of people who are incarcerated. So
I'm phoning in a question right now. They'd like to reduce the number of people who are incarcerated. I would like them to increase the number of criminals who are incarcerated for things like the inappropriate sexual relationships with children. So can you ask them if they can do that as well?
Sure.
I appreciate it. I'm going to call in. Are you taking callers?
I doubt it.
Okay, so then this is it. This is my
2 lawyers,
my
2 lawyers, a half an hour each. It's going to be not going to be a lot of free time.
Well, maybe
maybe.
Yeah. So okay. Well, I look forward to your show. 5 o'clock, Advocating for Justice. Thanks a lot, Arthur. Appreciate it.
Bye.
All right. They're listening to Waking Up. I'm Juliana Forlano in the studio with King Downing. Hey, we're coming on to the end of the show. We can take some calls toward the end of the show here if you'd like to. 1-2-209-2877. I didn't hear from anyone about how they went to the climate strike this week. I guess everyone is sleeping it off, or perhaps getting ready for the day with your kiddos, getting them off to school, etc. I heard from some listeners this week that they're listening to us while they're getting their kids ready for school. By the way, on September 25th, United Against Nuclear Iran conference is going to convene here in Manhattan. The conference is a gathering of war hawks who are advocating for regime change in Iran through sanctions, economic warfare, intervention in Iran, etc. Activists are, of course, getting together to have a protest. It's going to be led by Code Pink, our friends over there, and they're basically going to refuse to let these folks go on with their business as usual when lives are at stake. The group is going to be meeting outside of the Lot New York Palace at 9 a.m., where the conference is being held. The conference begins at 10, so activists will be welcoming warmongers to their conference with staunch opposition to war and sanctions. There's hashtags around this: peace with Iran, sanctions are war. Those are 2 hashtags you can follow to find this. But basically, it's Wednesday. Mark your calendar, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Lot New York Palace, 455 Madison Avenue at 50th Street. Now, I'm unfamiliar with the Lot New York Palace. I guess I haven't been hanging out. No, I have been hanging out with the right people, so I've never been invited there. But isn't it interesting that war hawk conference is happening in a palace? I think it's wonderful that Code Pink is going to be out there. I hope we are going to be out there, and you and I are going to be out there as well. We have a caller on the line. Caller, your name and where you're calling from.
I'm Frank from Harlem.
Hey, Frank, what would you like to say?
I just wanted to make a comment in terms of, I noticed that you do a lot of jumping on Trump, and I'm not a Republican nor a Democrat. I've never voted two-party. And I look at things bigger than Trump. I look at the two-party system and how they work against the people. And I think you should focus more on that than whether Trump is doing stupid things.
Well, we all know he's doing stupid things, I guess.
Yeah, because that's what I'm saying. That's standard. I've known him for 40 years in the city. I've known him when Central Park, I know who he is. It's the country who's getting to know who he is. But we give him too much time, and we should talk about the system rather than the puppet or the marionette they put in there temporarily.
Ain't that the case? Thanks, Frank. I appreciate that point. I appreciate it. Caller, you are on the line. Your name and where you're calling from.
Yes, hi. My name is Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
From New Jersey.
Yes.
And, I'm really encouraging you all. Like, I think you just said that Michael's having
Greg Palast. Yeah.
But you really should get Jonathan Simon. Jonathan Simon gives you the other half of the story as how the Republicans are stealing the elections and how they'll try to steal the next ones. And you might want to even, maybe he might even do something for the next fundraiser. He has a book on it, too, which is pretty amazing.
Lynn, I think you've called before, right? Alana, we reached out, didn't we? Yeah, we did reach out to Jonathan Simon. So he's in the hopper. And we appreciate you calling with that. So stay tuned, and hopefully we'll get him on here sometime soon. You're listening to Waking Up. I'm Juliana Forlano. Caller, you are our last call today. Oh, what happened? Maybe the toast started burning and he had to go. Anyway, great show. I appreciated everyone who came on, and I hope you're going to go out there and get active. What are you doing today, King?
I'm probably going to go to this march, this one at Bryant Park.
I like your flexible schedule. You just get it. Oh, good.
Yeah, when 5:30 hits, if I'm feeling it, I'll get out there and try to bring some sound back.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to that. Otherwise, we will be with you here tomorrow, as we are every day on Waking Up. I'm really excited about tomorrow is my wedding anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Thank
What
you.
number was it?
14.
Is it 14?
It's the aluminum anniversary, so we're going to put some siding on the apartment. No, I don't know.
Is it really?
No, I have no idea. What are you going to do with aluminum? Here, I got you some foil. Make a chicken. Hey, thanks, everybody, for listening. I appreciate your thoughts. I appreciate your calls, and I appreciate your listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and stay cool. It's going to be 91 degrees out there. Woo!
Stay cool.
Stay cool.